Hello, welcome to the Self Learning Podcast by Dr. Sushma Singh. Let us start discussion on Chapter 1 Social Structure, Stratification, and Social Processes in Society. Our topic is conflict and cooperation. The term conflict implies clash of interest. We have already seen how conflict theorists believe that scarcity of resources in society produces conflict as groups struggle to gain access to and control over those resources. The basis of conflict vary. It could be class or caste, tribe or gender, ethnicity or religious community. As young students, you are well aware of the range of conflicts that exist in society. The scale and nature of different conflicts that occur are, however, different. A widely held common sense perception is that conflicts in society are new. Sociologists have drawn attention to the fact that conflicts change in nature and form at different stages of social development. But conflicts have always been part of any society. Social change and greater assertion of democratic rights by disadvantaged and discriminated groups make the conflict more visible. But this does not mean that the causes for conflict did not exist earlier. It is also important to understand that the conflict appears as a discord or overclash only when it is openly expressed. For example, the existence of a peasant movement is an overt expression of a deep rooted conflict over land resources. But the absence of the movement does not imply the absence of a conflict. Hence, this chapter has emphasized the relationship between the conflict, involuntary cooperation, and also resistance. Let us examine some of the conflicts that exist in society and also the close relationship that exists between competition, cooperation, and conflict. We just take two instances here. The first is the family and household, the second is that of the land based conflict. Traditionally, the family and household were often seen as harmonious units where cooperation was the dominant process and altruism the driving principle of human behavior. The last 3 decades have seen a great deal of questioning of this assumption by feminist analysis. Scholars such as Amartya Sen have noted the possibility of enforced cooperation. Not only do the different parties have much to gain from cooperation, their individual activities have to take the form of being overtly cooperative, even when substantial conflicts exist. Although serious conflicts of interest may be involved in the choice of social technology, the nature of the family organization requires that these conflicts are molded in a general format of cooperation, with conflicts treated as aberrations or deviant behavior. Since conflict is often not overtly expressed, it has been found that the subaltern or the subordinate sections, whether women in households or peasants in the agrarian societies, develop different strategies to cope with conflict and ensure cooperation. Findings of many sociological studies seem to suggest that the covert conflict and overt cooperation is common. The extract below draws from many studies on women's behavior and interaction within households. Material pressures and incentives to cooperate extend to distribution, and there is little evidence of overt conflict over distributional processes. Instead, there is a hierarchy of decision making, needs, and priorities associated with age, gender, and life cycle, a hierarchy to which both men and women appear to subscribe. Thus, women appear to acquiesce to the instead activity perpetuate discriminatory practices in intra-house distribution in order to assure their own longer-term security, denied access to extra household relationships and resources. It is in this material interest to subscribe to the general son preference which characterizes this culture, and they invest in a great deal of selfless devotion in order to win their sons as allies and insurance against an uncertain future. Material altruism in the northern Indian plain is likely to be biased towards sons and can be seen as the woman's response to patriarchal risk. Women are not entirely powerless, of course, but their subversion of male decision making power renders to be covert. The use of trusted allies, relatives, or neighbors to conduct small businesses on their behalf, the secret lending and borrowing of the money, and negotiations around the meaning of gender ideologies of parda and motherhood are some of the strategies by which women had resisted male power. That their resistance takes this clandestine form reflects their lack of options outside households, cooperation, and concomitant high risk associated with open conflict. In keeping with the sociological tradition of questioning taken for granted common sense assumptions, this chapter has critically examined the process of cooperation, competition, and conflict. The sociological approach does not see these processes as natural, it further relates them to other social developments. In the following paragraph, we will read from a sociological study done on land relations and the Bhudan Gramdan movement in India. So now let us conclude the unit or chapter. The effort in this chapter is to understand the relationship between structure and stratification on the one hand, and social processes of cooperation, competition, and conflict on the other. You would have noticed that the three social processes are different, yet they often coexist, overlap, and sometimes exist in a concealed fashion. As evident in the above discussion about forced cooperation, we end with two activities that report real life events that help you to use your sociological understanding to explore the manner in which the three processes operate for social groups that are differentially located in the social structure and stratification system. Now let us wind up the session, and we have come to the end of the chapter. Thank you very much for engaging yourself with the Self Learning Podcast.